Yeah, so we are here from Heartland Alliance. And if you're not familiar with Heartland, we are a large international nonprofit that fights poverty and works to advance human rights. Um, the vast majority of our 1,600 staff are direct service staff, meaning that they provide any and all kinds of human services that advance human rights and end poverty, whether it's affordable housing, refugee resettlement. We are working on settling Afghans who are coming into the United States right now, for example. We do employment training. We do provide healthcare for people experiencing homelessness. But in addition to all of that great human service work, we also have our impact division, which is where my research team sits. It is basically the systems change arm of Heartland Alliance because we can provide all the services in the world, but that won't change the underlying social structures that still affect all of our participants. So it is our research and analytics team. So we have a research team that does longer term evaluations to understand the effectiveness of programs or to inform our policy agenda. We have our data and data strategy team, which helps Heartland deal with its massive amounts of data that are going on in the back end. We did a landscape scan several years ago, found over 100 different funder mandated data systems that were being used at Heartland Alliance. And we are in the middle of a data transformation effort to get all of that into a singular data warehouse so we can track, participants through their life cycle at Heartland. And Sonia is with our data analytics team, and she is a senior data analyst with Heartland. Sonia, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. Katie introduced me, Sonia Frugi. I'm a senior data analyst with the Impact.
Thanks, Sonia. And we're here today to talk about our Chicago Community Data Portal, which is one of our projects that is supported by the Robert R. McCormick Foundation, who initially came to us because their communities program was trying to understand how to target their giving, and they wanted to understand areas of highest need in the city of Chicago. And so we really worked with them to develop this tool to help them look at and understand data about areas of high need. And as we were building it, we realized there were a lot of uses for this kind of information beyond just the foundation. And they thought their grantees would find it really useful. The broader human services field in Chicago, even local media, other philanthropy, local government, even though we're getting their data from the government, they don't always have the capacity to look at it in a way that's meaningful. So we're gonna walk you through this today and talk, go under the hood a little bit to talk about why we made decisions we did around this tool and sort of, what our experience has been like over the past 3 or 4 years that we've been running it. So I imagine I'm preaching to the choir a little bit here, but whenever I talk about this tool, I like to talk about why you would even want to look at local data on poverty and well-being in the first place. And I would say my least favorite reason is that you're required to. Your funders are asking you, what is the need in your neighborhood? Are you, complying with meeting that need? Do you need to make the case for need for your services? So that's kind of not a fun reason because you have to do it, but again, it's a very important reason to have this data at your fingertips so you can effectively advocate for your programs. But you might also want to use it if you're running a nonprofit to understand areas of need in your service area, to understand local conditions and how they might change over time. You might want to understand how your community compares to others. You're operating in a resource constrained environment and want to target those resources effectively. Or, as with the funder example, you might want to raise awareness, make the case for your program, and communicate more effectively, whether it's writing a letter to an elected official or an op-ed that's going to speak to the general public. And, at Impact, we do work not only with Heartland Alliance, but we also do contract work with other nonprofits, foundations and local government, much like the data help desk in many ways. But, we only have so many human hours available to us. There's always more help that's needed than we can give. And so we wanted to create this tool to allow people to dig into the data on their own and not sort of meet the bottleneck of how much data analysis capacity is available in Chicago at any given time. And we really want to empower community organizations to use data to answer their own questions so that together we can move closer to ending poverty. And so I just want to talk a little bit why we selected the data that we did in the dashboard. First, when people say they care about poverty, often what they really mean is that they care about people's quality of life, not that their income is above or below a certain threshold. So we release a broad range of data on more than just income poverty to paint a rich picture of well-being and quality of life throughout Chicago communities. And we spent at the beginning of this project a long time doing a literature review to find the best evidence out there to select indicators that are highly predictive of well-being. And then we found the most rigorous data sources available on these indicators, whether it's from the US Census Bureau, universities, state agencies, or other well-regarded researchers. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it over to Sonia to do a demo of the dashboard.
Thank you, Katie. And I will pause to share my screen. Okay, this is the landing page of the dashboard. And as you can see that we have 3 icons. So we split up 3 areas that are covered are economic opportunity, education, and community health. And then we also have the icon here that's for tables. So if you know exactly what kind of, when I go into it, you'll see all the data. So you know what indicators you're interested in, what geography, you don't want the visual, you just want the data pool. Tables is a great place to go and get that Excel file that you can work on and customize and do your own analysis in. So once we get in there, we could go in. So I'm going to start with the education one, and it'll load for a second. Okay, cool. So you'll see that we have 3 dashboards under education. The first one is where we have this is our main dashboard where you have context right here on your left-hand side. And then we have these buttons here, which allow you to select whatever geography you want that you want to compare. And then we have our indicators that you select. So for education, we have number of preschoolers, we have proficiency score outcomes, we have growth outcomes, high school graduation, attendance, mobility and truancy rates, and suspension, school effectiveness, college outcomes, and graduation rates. And this is the same drop down you'll see here. So this lets you compare not only Chicago to a community area, but Albany Park with Albany Park to Albany Park on 2 different indicators. So we want to look at proficiency score, but then we also want to look at growth at the same time. So you could be able to see that both. And then we also have another dashboard here where we have similar data disaggregated by gender and race. So we have here, you can also compare again. Everything's preset to Chicago. That's usually the first geography and the geography 1. Geography 2 is usually Albany Park. But this is these are indicators that can be disaggregated by gender and race, and not every indicator will be. And we'll let you know, we have hyphens and we have data notes when you scroll over that let you know, okay, this data wasn't available or that it wasn't reliable. As you guys know, once you get into smaller geographies, the data becomes less reliable and we didn't want to provide that data. So we'll let you know as you hover over that this is the reason why you won't see any data for that indicator. And we also have the same thing here where we have the context on the side, but it's just disaggregated by gender and race. The third dashboard we have lets you see all of the indicators that are in the main dashboard, but visualized geographically. So then you can compare your target geography or community area, South Shore, and then see how it compares to the rest of Chicago. So let me go back here. And these are kind of the similar how all the other dashboards are set up. So for education, that's it. And then we could look at community area and I could show you the indicators there and some other functionalities of the dashboard. Just take a second to load. So we have the context again, and then we have the drop downs available so you could filter by whichever community area you're interested in, and then indicators. So for community health, we have public benefits, healthcare access, maternity and child health, public safety, and life expectancy. So you're able to compare geographies here. You could also do, for example, let's say I'm interested in I'll just stick this one. And then I'll stick with that. And then I'll public benefits. And for example, if you don't want, you only want data available for, you're interested only in data that's from 2016 to 2019, what you can do is hold the shift button and select, and you will see this tooltip kind of pop up. And you can say, like, I want to include these years because I'm only interested in 2016 and 19 data. So that lets you do that. And then you're able to also download the data. So you'll get Excel spreadsheet if you do the data or crosstab. So you get the dialog, you download it. It won't show up right now, but if I might have to go out of big screen, but oh, there we go. Then you can see the open up, and this lets you play around with the data or customize and do whatever analysis you want. Also, you could, if you're interested in this visual and you want to plug it into a report, you could also download it again and get like a PDF or a PowerPoint or an image file, and that'll let you plug it into any report or presentation that you're working on. So you don't actually have to create it from scratch. You have it pre-built already. So you have it, and then you would just cut and paste to that visual. And then once again, we have the data disaggregated by gender and race. Same options. You could filter on any geography, and then you're able to do race and gender. And then for community health, we have data disaggregated by for public benefits and healthcare access. And then you get the map view again. So let me take you to our third dashboard, which is economic opportunity. All right. And the indicators we have for this are employment, which is jobs, and then unemployment rates. We also have employment, which is industry. So the different types of industries that residents are working in, then income and wages, education attainment, housing. We do rent burden and ownership. And then we have like foreclosures, and then small businesses, which is just like the number of loans made to small businesses and to businesses that make under 1 million. And then once again, you do have data disaggregated by gender and race. And for this, we have jobs, we have unemployment, income, education, attainment, and housing. And then the map view, which lets you see how any community area that you're interested in, how it compares to overall to the rest of the Chicago. And then the last feature I'll show you is the tables, which I said is now that you know, like if you have an idea of what indicators you're interested in and like what geographies, you don't really need the visual and you just want to just get the raw data, you could go to the tables. And then you can select any indicator you're interested in. So for example, let's see, I will do rent burden. So I'm interested in overall unemployment. Do rent burden. You see it's already populating, and then I can select the geographies. You could do all 77, or you could just select the few geographies you're interested in. And we also have Chicago. So everything, we always have Chicago overall in there. So you could always have what the city is compared to the community area. And then also by year, if you want to look at older, you want to go back to 2014, you'll see the data. Or if you want to look at more recent data for that indicator, you could do that. And after you know what you want, after you selected your options, you just go back to here and you just click a crosstab, and then you're able to download that Excel file or a CSV file to use and play around with. Okay, so these are our tools. I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint presentation to kind of talk to you more about like how we decided on and how we developed these. So how did we decide on the functionality of the dashboard? So this is our third iteration of the dashboard. And every time we've updated it, we've actually solicited feedback from users, and we also ask community stakeholders, how are they using it? What indicators should go in there? What do they need? Do they need visuals? Do they need to be able to compare? What do they need to be compared to? What kind of functionality they need from the dashboard, and then also like what visuals they need, or do they need visuals, colorful or whatever. So we always solicit those kind of feedback from our users and like stakeholders. So for each update that we've made, and what we found is that users really like being able to compare a community area to itself, and being able to compare it to Chicago and then to other community areas. So there's 3 ways of comparison, which they find super useful. And that's why we also added that mapping component at the end. So maybe they, if you want to look at all the community areas at once, you might not be able to filter, be able to do that as easily with the dashboard because there's only 2 drop downs. But with the map, you're able to see all of the 77 community areas, and also there's in the tooltip that tells you what Chicago is. So you're able to get all of that information and visually be able to see where those disparities are. Another thing that users found really helpful was having that context on the right-hand side. They didn't want to have like the basic stats like poverty rates or child poverty rate or composition. They didn't want to have it open in another tab. They liked having that information right alongside the indicators they're interested in. So that's why for each indicator, you always see the context, and each dashboard, there's always that context piece there so that you don't have to go to another screen and it's right there at your fingertips. Also, you might notice as I was hovering, there was like definitions coming up. And one of our previous iterations, there was a lot of feedback on not having to go to another tab to get that definition. Like when you say high school graduation, what does that mean? CPS also reports 4-year and 5-year. Which one are you reporting? So we try to provide that context in our tooltips so that you don't have to go somewhere else. You stay on the dashboard, you get your information you need, and you have it. You have it there. You don't need to switch or go to a data notes section or anything like that. If you're interested in more definitions or more sources, that's definitely available. But for like immediate need, we try to put enough context in the tooltips and in the data sources so you have that information right there when you need it. And though we did have those like second dashboards, which were the disaggregation by gender and race. And we got comments that was really helpful because it gives you it allows you to dig deeper and get more context and more data points and make better argument for your recommendations or policy and proposals. So a lot of users really like that secondary dashboard of being able to do that comparison across gender and race. Another thing that we got a lot of feedback on was the visual. So we stuck with bars and line graphs because those are like the most easiest to interpret. And we did try to play around with it. We had bubble charts in the previous iteration of it, but that took up too much real estate. And we were like, okay, and we wanted to add more indicators in, so we had to take that out. We also had a box and whisper plot for a second, and that was hard for people to interpret. So we had to take that out. So when we try to get feedback, we want to give the visual that's easy to interpret for users, and they don't have to spend time explaining what the plot is. Like people see it and they're able to immediately know, okay, these are the high rates, these are low rates, immediately understand what the visual is supposed to convey. So that's what we stuck with, like bars and line graphs mostly in the dashboard. And you also notice that we had three dashboards for each of the topic areas. And the reason why we ended up doing that is because we ended up having way too much data. And then there was a lag, and a lot of users didn't like that. We got feedback they didn't like waiting, and sometimes they ended up getting with error, like waiting 5 minutes for a load. And so we ended up having the 3 different dashboards, and then we actually tried to have all the indicators on one map dashboard, but it was not happening. So we ended up dividing it up and having only one map with all the indicators for that topic. So all education indicators are in that map, as well as the context, and only community health indicators are in the map dashboard. So that kind of made it easier and did not cause that lag in the loading for the dashboard. I mean, right now we have like over 50 indicators across the 3 different dashboards. So we're always trying to find a balance between providing what users want, like the indicators are interested in, but also we're also very aware of the user experience. We don't want something that lags, that's taking too long, that causes errors, you know, just like is not useful. You know, this kind of defeats the purpose of having the data at your fingertips and having these dashboards being really easy to use. Katie already kind of went over this a little bit. She like how we decided the indicators. We did do it. We did an extensive literature review to determine what are the best indicators of well-being within education, community health, and economic opportunity. But we also spent a lot of time talking to stakeholders to find out, what are they interested in when we say economic opportunity? What indicators do they think of? When they're writing something up or they're writing a proposal, what data points do they use to flesh out their points? So that's why we spent time doing that, and that kind of helped us figure out what indicators to go. But ultimately, what went into the dashboards was not only the feedback, but also the frequency and accessibility of the data. So what I mean when I say frequency is like, it's a data point that is updated regularly. We don't want something that's stale, like it's 2 years old, 3 years old. That's not going to be helpful. So we want something that's regularly updated annual basis. And we also wanted something that's accessible. So our dashboards are very much focused on the Chicago community area. So we need indicators or data that is available at that geography. So it could be census tracts or it could be zip codes that could be rolled up into community areas, but they had to be available at that geography level for us to do that. So those are the 3 things that helped us determine what went into the dashboards. The feedback we got, the frequency of the data that's updated, the accessibility of that data point really helped us decide which indicators ended up in the final dashboards. This is for later in the Q&A, but we wanted to ask you, guys saw the tool. I just walked you through the 3 different dashboards and the table. What did you guys see uses of the dashboard in your work? And how do you think the dashboard would be helpful to your partners? And just ponder this, and then we'll come back to it in the Q&A section.
But yeah, I think we're actually at the time when the Q&A is supposed to start. We had one more demo, but I just want to be respectful of the agenda and see if people have questions we should get to.
Okay.
If you have another slide, you are welcome to spend like 5 more minutes presenting, and then we can jump into Q&A after.
Okay. Yeah, go for it, Sonia.
Okay. It's more like an application of the tool. So if there was, say, for example, you're a program officer and you're interested in expanding your internship program, and you wanted to know who to target and what types of fields that you want to find placements in, you would go to the economic opportunity dashboard. I'm going to share the dashboard again so you guys, we can walk through the example. Okay, so let's go back. Try to be quick. So we'll go to the economic opportunity. And I think if you guys remember, we had unemployment rates in there as well as industries. So what we do, and we would go to those indicators, and also like, for this example, South Shore is your target community area. So let's keep Chicago overall, and let's go to South Shore. Now let's look at employment rates. As you can see, 16 to 19-year-olds have the highest unemployment rates compared to the overall city rate. So this will help you, like, if for figuring out like who to target for this after school or this internship program, you would want to target 16 to 19-year-olds. But if you wanted to take a dig more deeper, what you could do is look at what industries you wanted to target. So let's go and look at industries as well. So now you know who you want to target. Now you want to see where should you be looking at placements. So we have these industries here. So for Chicago, the top 3 industries are professional, scientific, and technical services, healthcare and social assistance, and then accommodations and food services. But if you look at South Shore, what you see is those are not the same top 3. Their top 3 industries where residents are working are healthcare and social assistance, support and waste management, and then retail. So you could make a recommendation as the program policy maker that recommend to connect young people to high demand jobs in these industries. So this would be like an example of an application of how to use the dashboard in your work. Sorry, I know I did that really quickly, but.
Thanks, Sonia. I think that is all from us, and we want to thank you again for having us here, and we're happy to take any questions you might have, or also revisit the question we had for you of how you might see it in your work, or if you're working with other community organizations, how they might use it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad we got the last few demo in, because I think it's a great way to kind of connect the dashboard with like a practical example. So that was really helpful. Yeah, so for folks watching the live stream, go ahead and type your questions in the chat if you haven't already, and we'll start asking them in the order we receive them, and along with the prompt that Katie mentioned as well. It's just if you could sort of see how this could be useful for you or your partners, they would love to hear that feedback. I can, I guess, start off with the first question that I have actually. So I'm kind of curious. It looks like the dashboard pulls data from a number of different sources. Can you just share a little bit about like what's the process of collecting that data look like? Are any of the indicators that you're showing, are they derived by you, or are they all sort of just you're taking them from the source? And you mentioned actually, Senya, that it's something you update annually. So what does it look like to update this data on an annual basis?
Yeah, I'll pass that one to you, Senya.
Okay. So some of them are derived because Chicago community areas is a unique geography just to Chicago, and a lot of the data sources like the census will not report on that. So what we do is we have a crosswalk of what census tracts match up with community areas, and we're able to do that for a lot of the indicators that come from the census. A lot of the other indicators are available. Sometimes they're available by schools, and then we're able to figure out what schools are within each community area. And so that's another way that we're able to roll those kind of indicators up for education.
Yeah, just to expound on that a little more, we went back and forth at first whether to present school level data or community area level data for education. And we realized that when we were, people had questions about both, and there's like a great Illinois State Board of Education school report card already that has school level data. So we thought the sort of value add to the field would be sort of giving this community area level analysis of how schools are doing. And then we also have a link in that dashboard to this is the state report card. So people, if they want to dig in deeper and find out, the school that their kid goes to, how's it doing, they can go to that. But yeah, they're not derived in the sense of like, we're not creating an index or something like that. We do actually, we have a state level dashboard that we are not presenting on today, but is also on our website at heartlandalliance.org/research, that we do a county well-being index where we take, 4 different indicators, look at how each county is doing relative to the state, and also change over time, and sort of give them a weighted score on, are they on our watch list or are they on their warning list in terms of like how distressing the indicators are. But that's not at the Chicago level one. Oh, and then also the process of updating it. Yeah, it's pretty manual. Like we don't have like connected to APIs in the back end or anything like that. Sonia just downloads the data from all the websites. Some of them we have to FOIA and get the data, and if someone changes their jobs and we have to find a new person to track down, and then clean the data, do the crosswalk, and then we have like a quality assurance process where we have someone, check on the Tableau functions and make sure that they're sort of aggregating the data in the way that we intend it, and sort of match it against the source and stuff like that. So we go through that sort of as the data, it's once a year, so it's not like a nightmare. But that's sort of the process that we go through.
Great, thanks. You want to do the next one, Miko?
Sure. For the mapping component, did you consider geographics like other than community areas? Like, for example, like census tract or word or zip code? What was the reason for choosing community areas over other kind of areas?
Yeah, I think that we actually used to have a map that had tract level data. And the sort of feedback we got from the user testing is that people found it hard to understand in terms of sort of like a general population approach. Like I liked it because I thought it showed like a more nuanced picture of what was going on like within a community area. So, you know, even at the community area, like averages can gloss over a lot of interesting variation. But, you know, I think people just have more of an emotional connection to their community area than to their census tract. They have no idea what their census tract is. So I think based on that feedback, we opted to prioritize the census tract. I mean, the community area.
Cool. So you'd mentioned this actually, Tableau, that's the platform that this is built in. Can you share just a little bit more about the experience in working with it? I remember you said that it sounded like there was a loading issue, which sounds like that would maybe a Tableau issue where there's like too much data for it to load quickly. Were there things that made it that Tableau made easier, or were there things like that made it more challenging to work with that platform?
I think the easiest thing about the Tableau is like the drop down. So like the comparisons that people like, being able to do those 3 types of comparison. And that's really easy to build out in Tableau. And also like Tableau's interface is really easy like to use for everybody. The loading issue, there is a lot of data. Like there's over 50 indicators across those. So that is like a challenge. And we're always trying to figure out a way to find better indicators and maybe take something out. So that's a work in progress. But for the mapping, it was really heavy because we had all of the indicators and maps in one, plus the context. So then we ended up splitting it out, which I think worked out much better because then for each of the topic areas, you have that map for just that topic. So that was actually it was trouble for us, but actually in the end for the user experience it was better.
And I would say their customer support was not the greatest during that experience. They were just like silent for a month and they're like, you have too much data. I'm like, thank you. That was helpful. So we mostly figured it out ourselves. But I would say the other benefit is like mapping just seems a lot easier than like doing it all in ArcGIS or something like that. It's just, Sonia could probably speak to that more, but it took a while to figure out how to display community areas in Tableau because it's not like a native geography to Tableau, but she figured it out, and I don't know how.
Well, once they accepted shapefiles, Tableau allowed for shapefiles to be added in. That made it a breeze, as opposed to doing like in another platform.
Thank you. So the last year of pandemic, it caused a lot of disruption in our society. Do you see any changes in data? Is there anything significant just jumps out of the data you have?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that one thing that's unique about this project within like our team's portfolio of work is that we don't really analyze it. Like we are presenting it sort of neutrally to the world as like, here is a tool for you to interpret on your own. We do lots and lots of other work analyzing data and interpreting it. And in fact, we put out a report every year that is our Heartland Alliance's signature report on poverty in Illinois. And this year we looked at the impact of the pandemic on Black and Latino people in Illinois, and really looked at, the census started putting out this cool data source called the Pulse Survey that came out every 2 weeks, which was like way more frequently than the American Community Survey, for example, which comes out once a year and there's a lag. And they're like, looking at 2019 data is not useful in 2020 or 2021. Like the world has massively changed. So it's a smaller survey sample. It's harder to get really precise estimates, but we looked at what we could for Illinois and looked at it by race and gender. And I think, a lot of it is not surprising in the sense that the stories that you've heard during the pandemic are sort of borne out in the data, that, Black and Latino people experienced much higher financial instability, much more disconnection from the workforce, a lot more risk of exposure to COVID. But also, I think the thing that I found most surprising in that report was really looking at the mental health disparities, especially for women of color, and just sort of the toll that it took to sort of all of these sort of economic and health things going on, physical health things going on, had an effect on people's mental health, and that really showed up as well. And I felt like that story hasn't been told quite as much. And we also had stories from people who were harmed by the pandemic in the report. So that's also on our website, heartlandalliance.org/COVID-19 report. So yeah, but that's not about the dashboard, but we don't really analyze that data. So if you want analysis, I would suggest looking at our other research reports.
You actually mentioned mental health. So are there indicators in the portal under, say, like the community health section that are related to mental health?
Sonia, I think we struggled to find mental
Yeah,
health related indicators at the community area level.
yeah.
Okay.
'Cause then you get into
that's why I
like a
asked,
smaller
because it's hard to
geographies.
find.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
One.
with our report, it was on Illinois, so we had a lot broader
Sure.
array of data sources rather than at the community area level.
Understood. Yeah, I do think I forget, Ksenia, when you were demoing, I think one of the education indicators I remember seeing, like it was like a pre-K enrollment, and you just see like a huge cliff in like the 2020 school year, which tracks, right? There was like a big story about like the under enrollment, like 1 million kids didn't go to school last year because of the pandemic. So it sounds like, yeah, that sounds like an example of the dashboard sort of like reflecting back some of these stories that have already been written about. Kind of curious, like following on that, are there things that like maybe surprise you, like that jumped out, like maybe there isn't a narrative or a story that's been written about that maybe there is a story that the data potentially shows that like it just hasn't maybe been many words haven't been written about it yet to sort of identify why or what it is?
Sonia, do you have any thoughts on that?
The only thing is that the data right now is there's still a lag because like the American Community Survey only comes out once a year, and that data, we have some data that reflects what happened in 2020, but not all of the data is reflective of that. So we're still waiting on that. And I think hopefully early next year, we'll be able to have that data so we have a better picture, and especially those indicators like economic opportunity, some of those indicators will be available then.
And one of the many like bad things of the pandemic is that it really screwed up data collection. And so like the ACS this year, for example, didn't release a lot of their data, and they're sort of creating this like experimental like synthetic data set that they're putting out instead of actual data that is collected from humans, because they had such poor response rates because of the pandemic. So the 5-year data is supposed to come out in December normally. The 1-year data not a lot was available at small geographies. I can't imagine the 5-year data will be much different, but we will find out. So hopefully we'll have something to update that reflects what went on during the pandemic.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that. I remember we even promoted it every week at Hack Night for people to fill out the decennial survey.
Right.
But yeah, I had not heard that. Yeah, it makes sense, but I hadn't heard that there was problems collecting data for the ACS, but that tracks. So yeah, we have an audience question. So are there other data dashboards that you found in your research that inspired or influenced the dashboard that you ended up making?
Sonia, do you want to talk about like the other resources page maybe?
Yeah, we do have a section where there are other dashboards that we link to that are not available, just like they're not available at the community area, but they're still really relevant for like Chicago and how the well-being of Chicago. So we do have that, and we also have like links to reports in that section as well.
And I would say like in terms of inspiration for the dashboard, it was probably more like the reading we've done about data visualization from folks like Stephanie Evergreen and Ann K. Emery and Edward Tufte and all of those greats that tried to inform like the way that we sort of present the data, as well as from like the feedback we got from direct users.
Yeah, when you said you were using like tables and charts, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's tufty.
Yeah. No one
Um,
liked our box and whisker plots. I'm like, guys, it shows
right, the bubble
the
chart,
range.
super cool, but
I know. They're like, I don't know what this means. And I'm like, I guess that kind of is important.
Right. Just real quick, you mentioned that there's a resources page. Where's the resources page on the portal, or where's the link to it?
It's actually at the bottom of, sorry, can I share my screen again for a second?
Yeah, please.
Okay, I will. It's at the bottom actually of, oh. Let me go back here. And when we go to the landing, it's actually at the bottom. If you scroll down, we have more information. And then this links to other reports as well as other dashboards that are really helpful.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. You wanted to do the next one, Miko?
Sure. It took me a while to find the unmute button. Sorry. May have missed it, but this was from the audience. I may have missed it, but how has the city responded, provided input towards this dashboard?
Yeah, we haven't gotten a lot of direct input from the city. However, our program officer who supports this at the McCormick Foundation was at a big city summit on poverty that was in early 2020, like one of the last in-person events. They actually used our maps on their like official City of Chicago slideshow to like show the trends on poverty and stuff like that. So it was like, it's your data, but I'm glad the maps were useful. So I thought that was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a big win for sure. Cool. I think this might be the last question. So we talked a little bit about the data coming from like ACS and census. Can you talk about maybe data, and you also talk about data sources that you're always seeking out new ones. Are there some data sources that you kind of really wish you had access to that would provide indicators that you maybe don't already have? Like are there sort of some in this sort of a wish list that you'd like to add in the future? And I'm kind of curious, what are some of the challenges for getting some of those data sources?
Yeah, Sonia, would you want to talk about some of the requests from user testing that we haven't been able to fulfill?
Yeah, we've had a lot of requests for like the community health indicators, like mental health, also like if food banks, like green spaces, and then just like child health, chronic health, a lot of like health indicators, but because you get into more like a small segment of the population, that's a smaller sample size, so that become not available at the Chicago, like the community area. So that's like, it comes up, but we just haven't been able to find a source that does provide that information.
And I think with health specifically, there's a lot more like privacy concerns with small geographies.
Yeah.
I would also say with health data also, that's also been really harmed by the pandemic because surprisingly, public health departments like putting out public data is not their top priority right now. So a lot of it is old and they're getting updated, but it's just an even longer lag than usual.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I think we're just about at the end of time, but I do want to come back to the prompt that you had asked. I don't think we got any responses from folks in the live chat about sort of what they would use it for. But I can imagine, just looking at the data, a use case maybe you thought about it, right? Is the reporter is doing a story on a particular community area and they're talking about, say, they're writing a story about the pandemic, right? It seems like having a tool like yours would be really helpful for being able to go and like pluck a number, pluck a statistic that can kind of like be then used to like undergird the reporting that person is doing. So I could imagine it would be really useful for that because it's sort of so much, as you mentioned, it's like 50 indicators like all in one place. I'm kind of curious, is that something that have you talked to journalists or have any journalists used your tool before?
Yeah, we've had some come to sort of like, we haven't had targeted outreach yet, although we've had them come to sort of like general purpose webinars and stuff like that, and use it in local reporting. But we do want to get it, we want to do some outreach to Block Club Chicago, especially because they do that like really hyper local journalism, and thought this would be particularly useful to them. So that's on our list to try to get it in front of them and talk to them about it.
Yeah, right on. Cool.
And the McCormick Foundation also funds a lot of like media related work. So they have good connections there. So
Yeah, right. Especially like the education stuff. I know it's a big thing for them too. So I'm sure
right.
we'll hear about that. Cool. All right. Well, I think we're just about at time. So I think we can wrap things up. But again, thank you, Katie and Senya, for presenting. This is really great, and always wonderful to hear about a new resource that's available for folks to use in Chicago. We've got a lot, but hey, we're in a good company, so it's really awesome for you to come share.
I don't think I said where you can find it, but it's at heartlandalliance.org/Chicago data. So.
Yeah, and we dropped the link in the live chat as well, so
great.
You can grab it there. But yes, thank you. Cool. Well, I think we can wrap things up and switch over to the post live stream event. So yeah, the link to that, we'll drop this in the live chat too, but it's bit.ly/CHN remote Zoom. That'll be starting just about right now. So if you want to head over there. And yeah, thank you, Katie and Senya, again for presenting.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Oh, and should we do our catchphrase at the end, Miyako? You want to do it? All right. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Go forth and
hack.